Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne, and welcome to Mama Paul in the Kitchen. How to make a brown rice tofu sandwich, part 2. Part 2, how to make a brown rice tofu sandwich. So in the last part, we set everything up, and we had the rice in the pressure cooker and the tofu getting marinated on the stove, and we cleaned the vegetables. Well, this is what the marinated tofu looks like right now. I filtered it out, laid them out. You see, it's nice light brown color to it. Still some of the garlic and herbs drizzled on it, and it's absorbed quite a bit of the miso tahini, the tahini spread. There was literally twice as much of this when we started, twice as much of this, and most of it has been absorbed by the tofu. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put this in the toaster oven, and we're going to put this on at, say, 320 right now. We'll put it on 320 for a few minutes. We'll get it started at 20 minutes. Hopefully I'm going to get this thing out of there, and we're going to finish these sandwiches off and do them within this brief show now. I'm going to saute the rice also. I turned the heat on. It's my big wok. And we're going to put a little bit of the oil in. And we're going to put the rice in. Now this is all the rice that I cooked earlier. So this is the 3 cups of rice. Excuse me. Yeah, 3 cups of rice, 4 cups of water. And what I just did was I forgot to put the leeks in. How about that? All right, let's add a little bit more. This. We'll get the leeks at the bottom here. So those are the leeks that I sauteed, that I diced up earlier. They should have been at the bottom. They should have been sauteing, and then the rice gone on top. I blew it. It is what it is. This is the first time I've tried to do anything like this that is this complex. So it's my first time out with this. I'm not getting everything in that I'd like to, but this will work out just fine. We're going to keep the leeks at the bottom and put the rice over the leeks. The rice is already aerated nicely. The big thing is you want to have the rice aerated. So when you take the rice out of the pressure cooker, when you take it out of the pressure cooker, you want to get it to aerate and put a little air through it. You don't want it sticking together. You want as much separation as possible. All right. So I'm just going to let this saute a little bit. Yeah, this is going to work. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put a cover this a little bit and add a little water that will help steam it, and it'll, you can't see the flame from under there. We'll turn it up a little bit. Okay, so when we make the sandwiches, we're putting them on a organic whole wheat tortillas, and this is the brand I got this week, Stacy's. Originally I said I used to use the Garden of Eden. In fact, I did a show about Al Jacobson from Garden of Eden about a month ago, and he was my inspiration for my expression having to do with persistence and working at things for a long time. So we're going to make 6 of these. I'm going to lay out a half a dozen of the tortillas. There's so many tortillas out there right now. I bought a wheat-free tortilla. I bought a sprouted wheat tortilla. At one point I thought I was going to maybe make a dozen of these or more. I cut the whole thing back. We're going to make 6 of them. That's more than enough. And I'm going to let the tofu go. I'm going to add the soy sauce in about at the end. I put the soy sauce in at the end. Mostly I wanted to make sure that the leek is getting a little bit cooked, and it is. The leek is steaming up nicely. We got the flame up a little bit on it. And the tofu, the marinated tofu is in here. Actually, we're going to turn that up a little bit. Let's make it at 390. Okay, now the first thing that's going to go down on these chapati bread, or tortillas, what they're called nowadays, is the miso tahini spread. Now, when I finished the last show, I was using this immersion blender. I was using this immersion blender to blend the miso tahini spread. Forget about it. Not the tool to use. I had to go back and using the regular blend. You want this kind of a blade to make this kind of a mix. The immersion blender with the tiny little blade in there didn't do the job at all. So I had quite a bit of a mess here after I got off the air, and I had to add some more tahini to it. It was a little bit too strong. So you don't want to be more than 3.5 parts tahini and about 3.5 to 1 maybe of the miso. So 1 part miso to 3.5 parts tahini. So more tahini. So this is what it's looking like right now, and it's real dark. If it was a little lighter, it wouldn't hurt at all. Wouldn't hurt at all. Okay, so I'm going to put this down, and then after that the rice goes down. So we can't have this being too hot. So actually, the bottom is just starting to stick. I'm going to put a tiny bit more water in there so we don't get the sticky. And I'm going to add the soy sauce to it. So I'll put a little bit of soy sauce in here. Now, you'll notice we've got miso, which is made from soy, and this salty miso tahini spread, and a soy sauce in here. The macrobiotic diet was very salt-centric. Very salt-centric. Because of the macrobiotic diet, I literally stopped using salt as an ingredient because there was so much salt in vegetables, as I discovered along the way. You didn't need all the salt. And a lot of these macros were getting overly salted. And what happens when you get overly salted is you start to get too tight. And this is frequently what happens to a lot of true believers, which is why I jokingly use the term a macroneurotic, referring to a lot of macrobiotic people because they start to take themselves too seriously. Okay, so miso tahini spread. I'm going to use 1 small scooperful. And this is literally the secret ingredient on the sandwich. This is where all the flavor is. The tahini is sesame seeds that are crushed up and ground up. So it's all oil. It's all the oil from the sesame. And it's got a real bittery kind of a flavor to it. Well, the more you grind it, the less bitter the tahini is. So the first time you grind it, it's real bitter. The second time you run it through a grinder, it's less bitter. And the third time, it's smooth and I wouldn't say sweet, but not bitter anyway. When you add the miso to it, you're basically adding the salt to the fat, and these are the key elements in any dietary regimen that's got weight and salt. People like the flavors, the fat and the salt go together really well. Okay, so I'm just going to spread this out. I'm going to put this like right across half of the sandwich, the bottom half. So I'm going to put everything on the bottom half of the sandwich, and then I'm going to fold it this way over the top. Now, the idea, I said I called it a sandwich. When I first got to California, I literally did not know what a tortilla was. I didn't know what tacos were. I come from New York, and in 1970 anything, there weren't any tortilla shops hardly anywhere in New York. There were a lot of things that weren't there. Okay, so the idea of putting all this food and wrapping it in this bread, I decided to call it a sandwich because I was familiar with sandwiches. It was a popular word for me. It wasn't exotic. I was trying to sort of normalize the whole look of the thing, and that was the whole point, to sort of just make it look like, you know, something your grandmother might give you. Okay, so we've got, as you can see, yes you can, Okay, now we're going to put the rice on next. Ideally, this would have been done much earlier, but like I said, I've been trying to do this thing live, so that's why we're here right now. So I'm going to use 1 large scoop for the rice, a small scoop, a small ice cream scooper for the miso tahini. When I used to put this miso tahini, I'd have it out and I'd be making my sandwiches, and I would be subleasing the space in a kitchen in town. And one of the guys who became my partner and literally my nemesis over time would come in, and he would grab a little piece of carrot, dip it into the miso tahini spread, and his eyes would, pop out. Oh man, this is good. And there is nothing about this miso tahini spread that you can't add to it that doesn't make it taste good. Put any vegetable with it, it's delicious. And let's press it out. Very nice. With a friend of mine, in fact I just saw him the other day, copied what I was doing this, and I guess the first kid on the block to make any kind of sandwich like this. In the early 80s, was no prepared foods in any of the health food stores, other than a few sandwiches that they were making internally, which is how I started. And I said this at the beginning, part 1. I was making these avocado sandwiches and these tofu sandwiches, but there was no like whole cooked food type of a thing. And the macros were eating rice, like it was going out of style, but there was no prepared meal for them. So I started to think this thing through, and after coming up with the fried rice and then adding the miso tahini, the idea, well, you need vegetables, you need a little salad, and you need the protein. So that's where the whole thing sort of came together. We started with the rice and everything. Now, just putting the tofu on would, okay, it's good. It's good. Now, I am, to tell you the truth, not the biggest fan in general of most tofu and most tofu products. But if you take that a nice firm tofu that's fresh, and you marinate it, and then you bake it, well, the baking gives it a little skin. So I put 2 chunks of this tofu, which is very hot right now, and the little skin that you put on it, along with the marinade, is what converts it from a soft, not so palatable item into a very palatable item. Now the funny thing about this, the really funny thing is, when I first started making these sandwiches, there was a whole idea about the amount of protein you needed to eat every day, and how you needed to mix the protein with the carbohydrates. And Francis Moore Lappé published the book, A Diet for a Small Planet. Well, I used to eat these, and I used to consider them gut busters because they sort of were digestively brought up quite a bit after an hour or so. And it turns out you should never put the tofu and the rice together. It's food combining. It's not food combining. You shouldn't be putting the protein with the carbohydrates in food combining. And what it does, it makes for a little bit more of a gaseous meal. Well, volume 1, she talked about putting the tofu with the rice. 4 years later, she found out that, that was a mistake, and you might want to separate the protein from the carbohydrate. So she issued a correction, and I used to make a joke, be careful what you're reading a health food book. You might die of a misprint. So, okay, we've got the carrots. So I'm going to put a nice little strip of carrot across there. So the thicker end is going to be not as soft as the front end, but that's okay. It's okay to have a little bit of a difference there. So I got 6 pieces, a couple little extra left over here. Why don't I just distribute it evenly? And we'll put another piece here, a couple of pieces here. Okay, and so we have the miso tahini, the tofu, the carrot, and now I'm going to sprinkle a little kale, which I've diced up in the last show. You know, we might actually finish this whole thing. When I first timed this out, I thought it was going to take me about 5 shows to do this. Seriously, I thought it was going to take me about 2.5 hours, but I was also planning on doing a dozen of these, which would be significantly more time, which is why I cut it back. It was just getting to be too lengthy, and the wife said, "What are you, nuts? Who's going to sit there and watch somebody doing this for that long a period of time?" Nobody. Okay, we're almost there. Sprouts next. Now, when I was making these, the macros, like I said, the macrobiotic people were very much into cooked foods, cooked rice, etc. They were not into salads on hardly any level at all. In fact, anytime they ate a salad, they would press it. They would press the water out of it. So when I first made these, I made these with another macrobiotic friend of mine, Donna Gale. And I created them, and I was making them for the family, and I was going to go commercial with them. And we decided there was a macrobiotic conference coming up, and Miso Kushi, who was the head of the group at the time, was going to be there. So we made about 150 of these and served them to the whole crowd. Well, everybody just loved them. They were super popular. A couple of people objected to the sprouts and the lettuce because it was too yin. Nice chunk of romaine lettuce on top of there. And look at that. And that's it. That's it. They're done. They're done. Okay. I think we got everything. We did it. The next step, we're going to wrap them up. Okay. I used to wrap these, and I would put them. This is going to work out here. I hope this works out right now here. Move the iPad over there. I used to put these little labels on. This is the second generation of the sandwiches. This is Mama Paul sandwiches. This was 6-7 years after Wildwood. When I originally came out with them, it was Wildwood Natural Foods, and they were called fried rice tofu sandwich. Then they became Mama Paul's brown rice tofu sandwich. And I used to put these little sayings on the back. The most savage controversies are those about matters as to which there is no good evidence either way. Bertrand Russell said that. Man Ray, the artist who, art is but the giving of restlessness a material form. I'll just read one more. Deep democracy states that good and bad may be less important than the relationship between them. Think about that and think about where we're at today and what's going on. It's good and bad may be less relevant than the relationship between them. Okay, let me see if I remember how to do these. So I would take the plastic out. Yeah, I don't think I remember how to do this even. And I would lay the plastic. Actually, what I did was at the end, I was making these, wrapping these in the plastic, and after a couple of years, I actually started putting them in a paper bag, a plastic bag, clear plastic bag, which was a better way to do it because the bag held them better. But I'm going to put a little label on here too. Look at that. I still got these old labels from God knows when, or does he know when? Who knows? Oh, you got to get this just right so it fits. See, I haven't done these in quite a few years, and this is my first attempt in a long time, and I can see it's not going as well as I wanted it to. No, I think I know what I did. The plastic wrap, I used to use a different roll of plastic wrap, a larger, wider roll, and I just gave it away last night. I did. I'm crazy like this sometimes. I give things away that I shouldn't be. And I brought it to work. They needed it at work. The cooks needed the larger roll at work. I brought it down to work. and I don't have it, and I should have it for this. So I'm just barely squeezing the labels onto these. But I'm trying to do this to show you how they look at the end. So at the end of the day, we have it wrapped in plastic, label on it like so, and that's what they look like. And the whole idea was to, I can put them in, this was the box I used to have this little box I would put them in, and I would, like so. And the whole idea was to take the plastic off and peel the plastic down, and I jokingly said to peel it like a banana. And a banana was sort of the complete antithesis of anything macroneurotic. It was a fruit, and it was a banana, so it wasn't a popular food in the whole community. So, and we're just barely squeezing the label onto these, but I am going to bring a couple of these down to the folks I work with at the restaurant. I might bring a couple down to the health food store right now tonight, and I know who wants one, and if Mark is out there watching, I suspect he is. Mark is the fellow that I collaborated with on the Tofu Mobile, which will be another discussion at another time, but Mark remembers the sandwiches well and has mentioned me making them, so here we are making them. I talked earlier about this other fellow who used to make these sandwiches, or a similar version. So he saw me making them and he saw how popular they were. So he figured out how to do it and make money at it. I was sort of just barely holding my own with it. They weren't big money makers, but I could support myself. And then after a while, when I went back, I reinvented the sandwich, went back into business, and made the sandwiches again, and never really made a lot of money with them. I just sort of barely supported myself all the time. Well, this other fella, he took pretty much the same ingredients I had, but what he did was, you'll notice how I laid these all out. I separated and layered it like you would a sandwich. Well, he used to buy my sandwiches at the end of his shift. I used to run into him every day, and we'd run into each other while we were doing our deliveries. And his were not opened at all, and they were sort of squished. And he would take all these ingredients and pretty much put them all in one big bowl and use one big scooper, boom, boom, boom. So whereas when I made these, they were layered out, and that's the difference. It's almost like the difference between a hash house and a fine dining in terms of the food. This is a culinary delight. There are people who have not eaten a sandwich in over 20 years and still remember them and ask me about them and the flavor of them. And it's one of those things, and it's that miso tahini that's in there. The miso tahini holds through. All right, we did it. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Mama Paul's original brown rice and tofu sandwich. Let's see, is it there? Yes. Okay. There they are. Holy kazonkers. The first iteration of how to make a brown rice tofu sandwich. Paul Duchesne as Mama Paul signing off. Peace, patience, persistence. We'll see you again soon.